Good morning, everybody. Hope y'all are doing well. So, the draft is over, and we're headed into the slow times. Yes, we are now officially here in the. I don't know if it's the slowest part of the off season because you do start to see your players take the field at your practice facilities. In our case, the VMAC. You do start to see things form, but it's one of the slowest times of the offseason. It's after the draft. There's a little bit of free agency left, but not a lot. There's a little bit of like rookie mini camps starting, but that comes in at like a trickle. Like I know later this week we're going to have the rookie mini camp, and we are going to get the schedule drop next week. But other than that, it's going to be pretty slow for a while. We're going to get the occasional little tidbit of information that oftentimes ends up not being all that illuminating, like straight up. um, Sometimes you just hear like, oh, this guy was running deep routes in practice, and this guy threw him the ball, and he caught it, and it was cool, but there was no defense. He basically jogged the whole route, but sometimes you don't learn a lot from it. So I'm going to use this time to really dive deep into some of these rookies that we picked up in the draft. This was a really important rookie class for the Seahawks. Us nailing these selections is key, right? We need to get this right. And as of right now, we have gotten it right. We have selected the right prospects. Now we need to develop those prospects the right way and put them to the best possible use. Put them in situations in position to be the best versions of themselves. So now that we know who our rookies are, now that we know what our rookie class is, I thought we could take some time to really deep dive into what these players are, what they can do, and why we decided to make them Seahawks. So that's going to be occupying this channel for the next week plus. It's a good way to have something to talk about, something of substance to talk about while we wait for mostly the schedule drop. But I want to go through these draft picks. I want to go into more finer detail on what we are getting into here. We're not going to do film breakdown because YouTube they don't want to let me be me when it comes to doing like film review stuff, but let's dive in. So, using my words the best that I can without visual aids, let's talk about Charles Cross. So, Mississippi State left tackle. He is pretty much a pure left tackle to me. When you look at his skill set, you look at what he does, you look at what he did in college where he played left tackle for all but literally 4 snaps in his career. He is a pure left tackle, which is nice because we know this team is fully capable of playing players out of position, especially on the offensive line. So it's good to know you have a guy who is a pretty unimpeachable left tackle. He's 21 right now. He turns 22 in November, late November. He will be halfway through his rookie year before he turns 22. And I really want to highlight that. That is a huge deal. The fact that he has not even turned 22 yet, the fact that he has not even turned 21 and a half yet. Think about tackles in the modern NFL. They stay good for a long time, especially guys who base their ability largely off of skill, which I do believe Cross does. He's not the strongest guy in this draft. He's not the guy who just overpowers everybody because he's bigger and faster and stronger. He's somebody who uses his technique to his advantage. So that bodes well to his ability to maintain a high level of play for a long time. I don't think it's exaggerating to say you might be looking at a quality NFL left tackle for 15 plus years. No doubt in my mind that you are going to get at least 10, barring him just straight busting. But you could get 15 up to 18, I would even say. Now, we don't need to get that far ahead of ourselves, but the age is a big deal here when you're evaluating him as a player. He's not capped out yet, and he's got so much football in front of him. Now, I want to also talk about his measurables. So I have his measurables here, and then in parentheses, I have their percentile compared to other players at their position. Now, when it comes to these percentiles, the thing to understand is I am comparing them to all offensive linemen, not just left tackles. So that's going to be crucial as we go forward for context. He's 6'5", which puts him right in the middle, 45th percentile basically. I don't think anybody's going to have a problem with a left tackle who's about 6'5". 307 pounds, 34th percentile, a little bit lighter, which, again, you would expect that. Interior offensive linemen and right tackles tend to be heavier than left tackles. So he pretty much lines up exactly with your expectations of what a left tackle would be, just a little bit lighter compared to the other linemen. Now, where he really stands out as a prospect would be with his arm length, 34.5 inches, 80th percentile. Now, that's good. It's not groundbreaking necessarily. Again, you would expect a left tackle to have longer arms than other offensive line positions. They need it. They're pass protecting more. They need those super long arms. So 80th percentile is, no one's going to complain about that. I don't know if it's amazing, but some of the things that he does have that are pretty amazing would be his hands. His hands are 10 3/4 inches. 92nd percentile, he has some of the biggest hands of any offensive lineman that has gone through the draft process in recent memory. So very few offensive linemen have bigger hands, and he uses them well, just like he uses his arms well. His 10-yard split on his 40-yard dash was 1.73 seconds, which is 83rd percentile. I would say, as far as left tackles go, that's well above average. Obviously, among all offensive linemen, it's very good, but you would expect a left tackle to be a little fleeter of foot than the center or the guards or the right tackle. That's how this works. That's why they play the position. 40 time, 4.95, one of the fastest offensive linemen that has gone through the draft process in recent years. 94th percentile. So those are the areas where Cross clearly separates himself from the pack. Well, I should also include his broad jump, because we're talking about his athleticism, right? We're talking about his abilities to play in space, abilities to move around well. 91st percentile in the broad jump. And 20-yard shuttle, 75th percentile. Now, I think that's probably more run-of-the-mill for a left tackle, but it's good. It's certainly good enough. It should be good enough for this offense that we're running. Now, where Cross falls a little short in his testing would be his vertical jump. He doesn't have a tremendous vert, and his three-cone drill. His vertical jump was only in the 28th percentile, 26 inches. Most offensive linemen who have gone through the draft process recently are better at the vertical jump than Cross. Now, what are the areas where the vertical jump could affect his ability to play left tackle? Not you wouldn't think it would be a huge deal, but it does indicate some shortcomings of his athletic ability. And then you have his three-cone drill, where he was only in the 40th percentile. And again, this is comparing him to all offensive linemen. So those are the areas where his athleticism comes up a little short. But overall, he tested quite well. Now I want to run down Charles Cross's college career at Mississippi State, because he was coming out of high school like the #1 recruit in the state of Mississippi, and he was highly recruited, but he decided to stay in state, which was surprising to some people. So 2019, he redshirted. He only appeared in 3 games, and he played, I believe, a total of 22 snaps. Basically didn't play. He got a little bit of experience at the end of the year, but it wasn't anything significant. No miles on his body, no real experience built up, just the opportunity to actually get out in front of a college crowd, I guess. So 2020 is when the fun begins. So let's talk about what he did in 2020. He started 10 games, so I think that was every game that Mississippi State played because of COVID. I could be wrong about that, but I believe that was every game Mississippi State played because the COVID shortened their season. I believe that Mississippi State actually claimed their bowl game by forfeit because their opponent had to not show up because they got hit with COVID right before the game started. I could be remembering that wrong, but I believe there was something like that happening. But anyway, he made the freshman all-SEC team, and this is something that I really want to stress as we talk about Charles Cross here. He was playing in the SEC, and Mississippi State is not a big school. It's not a powerhouse school, but they are playing powerhouses quite frequently. So, in that 2020 season, Cross had 720 snaps. 574 of them were pass blocking snaps, which was fourth in all of college football, despite him only playing 10 games. Now, a lot of other players had similar limitations, but Cross was getting a ton of experience as a pass protector. Now, over the course of those 574 pass blocking snaps, he allowed 6 sacks, 5 QB hits, and 33 quarterback pressures. So you're looking at basically 4.5 QB pressures total a game over the course of his first full year starting. And one thing I want to emphasize here, because there are some concerns about Cross's ability to translate to a more pro-style offense, because Mississippi State does run the spread. They have the Mike Leach offense in place. They pass the ball more than a lot of other teams, even in college football. However, he is playing against really good competition. 3 of Mississippi State's games in 2020 were against teams that ended up in the top 25. Texas A&M, Alabama, and Georgia. Now, 2020 is where he really popped off. And he started, and I really want to emphasize again, the level of competition he was up against was as good as it gets. Now, Mississippi State, not a great team. They weren't a great team either of these 2 years, straight up. But they had to play elite competition. And the thing about Cross is that, especially in this 2021 season, which is obviously the most interesting one, he was consistently great in almost every game Mississippi State played. This was not a thing where he was really, really amazing in a few games, and then he had a game or two where he wasn't good. He was consistently good. Sometimes he broached into great or excellent or borderline perfect, but he was not somebody who was having bad games. His consistency was one of the things that got people's attention. So he started in 12 games. He made the first team All-American from ESPN and Sporting News. He made the All-SEC first team Associated Press and Pro Football Focus. And he was the 2-time SEC Offensive Lineman of the Week. So he piled up some nice accolades in 2021. Multiple sources said that he was the best left tackle in America, and multiple sources also said he was the best left tackle in the SEC. Now, here's where things get spicy. PFF, and I want to stress, I don't consider PFF the end-all be-all for grading players, but when it comes to offensive linemen, they are trying and they're doing the best they can. His pass block grade was 84.9, which was first in the SEC. So he was considered to be the best left tackle in the best conference in college football. However, his run block grade was even better, 87.2. So his pass block grade and his run block grade were both really strong, but his run block grade was actually better. Now, his run block grade was only second in the SEC, but nevertheless, it indicates that he can do both, and that's really important to keep in mind because one of the knocks against Cross is that he can't run block. The evidence is that he can. He just didn't do it a lot because he was playing in a air raid offense. His overall grade as a player from PFF in 2021 was 86.7, which was second in the conference. Now, as you can see, once again, most of his snaps were pass blocking snaps. He played over 900 snaps and over 700 of them were pass blocking. But he was an extraordinary pass blocker. 2 sacks allowed across 719 pass blocking snaps, and 0 QB hits, 14 hurries. So 16 total pressures, basically, across 12 games, averaging 1.25 pressures allowed a game. When, again, the teams that he is on are passing the ball 55 plus times a game. And again, I know Mississippi State only running the ball less than 20 times a game. They're not a very good team, so they're not able to run the clock out at the end by running the ball a bunch. They don't run the ball as part of their normal offense a lot. However, when he was called on to run block, he did very well. And I want to really emphasize this next part here. The level of competition is actually really impressive. Mississippi State played games against North Carolina State, Texas A&M, Alabama, Kentucky, Arkansas, and Ole Miss. All 6 of those teams ended up ranked in the top 25 at the end of the year. All good teams, all teams that won, I believe, 9 games or more. So think about the level of pass rushers that he's going up against in these games. Like Texas A&M, they have Michael Clemens. Alabama, they have Fedarian Mathis. I mean, their whole defense is loaded with elite guys, so of course. But Ole Miss, I believe, had Sam Williams. So he's going up against the best of the best, and he's a brick wall over there on the left side. All right, so now let's talk about him as a player, not just based off what he did, but what he can do. Because obviously this paints the picture of a guy who is a primo pass protector. In fact, pretty much anywhere you look, you will find people saying that this was probably the best pass protector in the draft. The measurables paint the picture of a guy who is a prototypical left tackle and somebody who has the agility in most categories to play well in space. Very good 40 time, very good 10-yard split, solid 20-yard shuttle, excellent broad jump. So what makes Charles Cross somebody who is worth a top 10 pick? Let's break this down. Let's talk about how he's going to fit into this offense. So like I said, he's got a great frame for a left tackle. He looks like an idealized left tackle. Very consistent. In 2021, I don't know if he had any bad games. Maybe you could find one where he was a little worse than the other games, but I don't think you can find a bad game in there. If you can, it was probably like 1. At the end of the day, he allowed us 16 total QB pressures across 12 starts, despite pass blocking 55 plus times a game. He's got good technique with his hand placement. This isn't a guy who won battles because he was so much stronger than everyone. In fact, one of the things that some people have said is that he could actually stand to get a little bit stronger. He wins because he knows how to place his hands on his opponent's body and latches onto them really well. That's one thing I noticed when I was watching his tape. When he latches onto a rusher, really hard to detach from him. He's got big hands. He knows how to use them. He knows how to use his long arms to engage with a defender. Like sometimes you will see a defender kind of beat him to the edge, but then Cross manages to win the rep anyway because his arms are so long that he still manages to latch on. So those are the kinds of things that are going to translate when you start playing better opposition every single week. He's also really good at keeping his limbs inside for extra power. He's not the strongest guy. Like Ike Ekwonu and Evan Neal are probably stronger than him, but he is good at using technique to maximize the power that he has. He also has enough strength to mirror rushers for extended periods of time, and he's also controlled enough to stay on target. There were several plays I saw where he would start the play blocking one guy, and then suddenly he would realize that another guy was getting involved, and he would just go over. He would just go over to the other guy and block the other guy and allow his quarterback to get the ball out of his hands. Starts on one guy, and he gets him out of the way, and then he sees another guy getting involved, and he has the body control and the quickness and the agility and the good football IQ that he needs to get over there and engage with him as well. He's phenomenal against power rushers in particular. When you try to power rush him, he's really good at anchoring and not letting him through. The guys out there, like the 5-tech guys, the bigger guys, the stronger guys, are going to have a hard time with Cross because he's so good at using anchoring and his arms to find a way to win the rep. He's also, because of these things, he can recover when he's beat around the edge. You beat him around the edge, he can recover. He's explosive with his run blocking strikes. When he needs to actually proactively go into a block because there's a run block, he's actually quite good at it. And I've seen him maintain blocks in space on linebackers and defensive backs. On those rare instances when he was asked to go run block in down the field, he can do it. Okay, now let's talk about some of the things that some people have said in the negative about him. Some of the things that you could point out as a weakness. And there are some things. And I want to say one thing as well before I get into this. There is always going to be a difference of opinion on prospects, even from people who watch the same tape. You can have two people watch the same movie and come out of the movie theater thinking they watched different movies. That's what happens sometimes. So one of the criticisms of Charles Cross is that he's not a remarkably good athlete. Now, if you look at his testing numbers, in some areas, yes, he is. He's very fast for a big man, for an offensive lineman. His broad jump is awesome. His 10-yard split is great. But his vertical jump was very low. His 3-cone was not good, especially for a left tackle. So there are some areas where he's not a great athlete. His lateral movement was called into question by some, meaning that he does allow speed rushers to get the edge on him sometimes. Now, he can do a good job of recovering, but sometimes he does just get beat around the edge. He doesn't always get into proper position on reach blocks, and that's something that's going to be important here because we're running this Shane Waldron zone run blocking offense. Sometimes he can be a little slow on the seal blocks. Now, talking about those things, the reach blocks and the seal blocks, I think that can come with experience. This guy's 10-yard split is good. This guy's 20-yard shuttle is good. That tells me that he can do these things. He just didn't do them a lot at Mississippi State. But for the moment, I think it's a fair criticism of some elements of his game. Sometimes he struggles to recover against inside rushers. He's great at recovering on edge rushers when they beat him, but sometimes when they do like the slants in the gaps, he has a little bit of a problem recovering on those guys. He does get away with, well, I shouldn't say get away, but he does hold sometimes a little more than you would like. That is something that's going to bite him in the NFL if he doesn't get that figured out. He will need to add a little more variety to his sets because he is going to be playing better competition. You know, his punch timing and his set timing, it's just going to have to get a little bit better. And twists and stunts on the defensive line are occasionally able to trick him. Now, again, I think we got to remember, this guy started 22 games in college football. He's young. He's 21. One of the younger rookies we've had in some time. He will probably get better at these things. But I do think it's fair to point these things out. Now, some of these things are disputed. There are other scouts that said, I think his lateral movement and ability to play in space is actually really good. But, again, same movie, different viewing experiences sometimes. That's basically what I can say about Cross. Watching him play, again, you're just really impressed by his ability to block multiple players on the same play. It just seems like he's engaged with one guy, pushes him out of the play, and then he realizes he's got to shift to another player. He's got another assignment that he needs to pick up if the play is going to work, and he just does it. A lot of the time you feel like you see players, they get in that situation, but they don't actually get out there to throw the block. Very hard to detach from him. Pass rushers, I see them constantly. They get on him. They can't get off of him. He sticks to them. The questions, to me, some of them are fair, but a lot of them are just a question of That was the offense he was playing in. He was excellent run blocking when asked in 2021. It just didn't come up that often. So, as of right now, my concerns about his ability to run block are very, very minimal. And at the end of the day, I stand by what I've always said. This is now a passing league. And even if he is not the best run blocker in the world, this elite level of pass blocking, where he's going up against the elite of the elite in college football, played Alabama twice during his time in college, Texas A&M twice, playing ranked teams pretty much every other game in 2021. He shut people down over and over and over again. So that's what I want in a modern NFL offense, the ability to keep your quarterback clean. And watching him play, it's easy to see this stuff translate to the NFL. Could he stand to get a little bit bigger and stronger? Maybe a little bit. But I'm not really worried about any of that. So that's my rundown on Cross without using any film or visual aids, but trying to describe to you what kind of player we're getting here based off what he's done and what I've seen him do. That's what I'm seeing right now. We are going to have a phenomenal pass protector. The run blocking, I think it will be there. I think he can do it. I think he can play in space at least better than average. He will be better at it than Dwayne Brown. But time will tell. All right, so that's Charles Cross. I went a little longer on him than I thought, but this is important, right? This is the crown jewel of the Russell Wilson trade. All right, I'll see you guys later today. Tomorrow we will be doing our next drafted rookie. And see you guys then. Go Hawks.